Good afternoon. It's time, and I'd like to call this session of the Public Service Commission to order. Secretary Burgess, are there any changes to the final agenda?
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. There are no changes to the final agenda.
Thank you. With that, let's move to the first item for discussion, which is Item 101, Case 17G0432, which is the petition of NYSEG for authorization to construct a natural gas compressor pilot project in Tompkins County, presented by Mike Reeder, Chief of Gas and Water Rates. Cindy McCarron, Deputy Director of Gas and Water, is available for questions. Mike, please begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item 101 addresses a petition filed by New York State Electric and Gas seeking Commission authorization for a proposed natural gas compressor pilot project in Tompkins County, New York. The draft order before you authorizes NYSEG to proceed with the pilot compressor project and to include the associated incurred capital costs in its rate base. However, the company's request to defer the incremental O&M costs associated with the pilot compressor project is denied because the expense forecasted to be incurred during the company's rate plan will be immaterial. In addition, by this order, NYSEG would be directed to issue a non-pipes alternative request for proposal within 30 days to address the pending gas demands in the Tompkins County area. By way of background, NYSEG has experienced significant growth in natural gas load in its Ithaca division in recent years. While the company has reinforced the system over the years, such work has reached some limitations, and during peak day conditions, the north end of the distribution system serving the vicinity of Ithaca, primarily in the town of Lansing, loses its ability to maintain minimum acceptable pressures. Continued pressure drops can create safety and reliability issues, which may require curtailment of some firm natural gas customers. To mitigate the system pressure issues and ensure safe and reliable service to its customers, in February 2015, NYSEG issued a moratorium indicating that the company would be unable to accept any new applications for gas service in this area. Demand for new gas service has continued to grow, and the low pressure level issues on the existing system have continued since that time. In 2016, NYSEG was authorized to proceed with the construction of a new $18.6 million, 7.4-mile gas supply project known as the Lansing-Freeville Reinforcement Pipeline to address the need for additional gas supply and pressure reinforcement in the town of Lansing. After numerous discussions over the past year with various stakeholders in the affected area and Commission staff, NYSEG proposed the pilot compressor project and RFP process to address the safety and reliability issues associated with the low pressure in the system and the increased demand for natural gas in the Lansing area. A number of Tompkins County representatives have expressed a strong desire to see non-pipes alternatives to the pipeline project to help meet Tompkins County's greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. Under the proposal, NYSEG will install 4 electrically powered compressors placed strategically within its gas distribution system to boost system pressures in stages during peak demand times. This is a unique approach to address the issue of gas distribution system pressure drops, one which has not been previously tested in New York State. The company intends to have the project up and running in time for the 2018-2019 winter heating season. Completion of the pilot compressor project alone will not eliminate the need for the moratorium on new gas connections currently placed in certain areas of Tompkins County, as it is designed only to address current low pressure issues on the system. To address the moratorium, NYSEG will begin exploring proposals to address not only the current pressure and reliability issues, but also to address the pending demands for the provision of gas service in the area for both existing as well as for new customers. Numerous residents of Tompkins County, as well as public officials, submitted comments in this proceeding expressing support for NYSEG's proposed pilot compressor project in opposition to traditional pipe solutions. The comments emphasized the need to curtail the reliance on fossil fuels and not invest in new infrastructure such as the pipeline that could become a stranded asset. but rather invest in energy efficiency and alternative heating sources, such as air or ground source heat pumps. Representatives from the Sierra Club, Environmental Defense Fund, and Tompkins County Area Development also filed comments supporting the proposed pilot compressor project. While most of the comments received were in support of the proposed compressor pilot project, the Lansing Town Supervisor criticized the proposal for failing to address the unsatisfied gas demand of current and new customers and the moratorium on new gas connections in the village and town of Lansing. The town supervisor reiterated his strong support for the pipeline project because Lansing has significant pent-up demand for development and housing, and the proposed pilot compressor project will not address the area's gas demand and future needs. Multiple interveners filed comments expressing general support for the company's petition for this particular non-pipe solution, but stated that it was concerned regarding the lack of a benefit-cost analysis in the filing. MI argues that non-pipes alternatives should only be pursued if a benefit-cost analysis shows demonstrable benefits to customers, and asks that such an analysis be performed for the non-pipes alternatives provided in response to the RFP proposed by NYSEG. We believe that it is sensible for the company to test, in this pilot, whether such compression equipment can be used to address pressure drops within a gas distribution system, and whether such compression equipment will be supported by customers and stakeholders. This pilot project is a novel way of addressing pressure issues without spending the significant capital investment that the pipeline project would entail. To address the concerns of the Lansing Town Supervisor, the company will be required to issue a non-pipe alternative RFP to seek proposals to address not only the current pressure and reliability issues, but also to address the pending demands for the provision of gas service in the area for both existing as well as new customers. To address the comments of MI regarding benefit cost analysis for the non-pipe solutions that may be proposed in the RFP, NYSEG is directed to perform such an analysis for each proposal, including those that are rejected, if any. Thank you. Cindy and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mike. The item today, I think, finds itself in support of the views of a local community that's keen to protect the environment and reduce the community's greenhouse gas emissions, and also of the state's well-established environmental and economic goals. I think this innovative pilot project to boost the gas distribution system's ability to maintain reliable supply without the need to build a new gas pipeline can be an environmental and economic model, and I find it very supportable. Are there any comments or questions from my fellow commissioners? Commissioner Sayre.
I'm voting in favor as well, but this decision did require some soul searching on my part. The compressor stations should resolve the problem of low pressure in the existing service area, but as Mike said, these stations won't bring gas to areas in Lansing where some people are asking for it. A pipeline would have solved both problems, but there are problems associated with pipeline siting, not the least of which is strong local opposition. This case is really an example of how it's a good idea for people to get involved in our proceedings. It appears from the comments and the input that we've received that the people in the area in question mostly prefer the compressors over the pipeline. So now that we know how the local affected people view the issues, that was a very substantial factor in my decision to approve the petition.
Thank you. Commissioner Berman.
Here it does address an emerging reliability concern. One of the things that I do think that the order fails in that the order, when it talks about Tompkins County area development, it states that Tompkins County is supportive of the natural gas compressor pilot project, which I do think it is supportive, but it's supportive with conditions and caveats. And I think that the order could have been more specific on the details of what the caveats were. And it listed out that their concerns more specifically, in particular in their concerns with the fact that some businesses were resorting to the use of propane as an alternative to natural gas because of the moratorium, to the extent that there was a length of time in completing the project, and also being concerned about the reasonable and economical non-gas pipeline solutions not being identified and needing to hurry up and address the issues. I also do think that the order does not fully accurately depict the multiple interveners' comments. While multiple interveners focused on the benefit cost analysis, it actually went into a 4-point analysis on the non-pipes alternative. And I think that looking at the multiple interveners analysis is really one that we might need to take a more holistic approach to. In this case, the 4-point analysis that the multiple interveners looked at met all 4 criteria. But I think the multiple interveners analysis is saying non-pipes alternative needs to pass some threshold benefit cost analysis economic tests, and it's not enough that for each and every case we go to non-pipes alternative as a go-to situation. That in fact it is something that should be looked at carefully, but it may not be the be-all and end-all, and we need to be very focused on when it is appropriate and have some real clear guidelines and guideposts for what that is. In this case, the 4 conditions that multiple interveners suggested and that met the case were that the project, one, that the project would address low pressures in the NYSEG's gas system in the region, and therefore its implementation arguably is justified on reliability grounds alone. 2, at a projected cost of slightly less than $4 million, the project is significantly less costly than other proposed pipeline projects. 3, there appears to be strong local support. And 4, successful implementation of the non-pipes alternative potentially could result in carbon emission reductions. So it wasn't just a matter of the benefit cost analysis, it was a little deeper than that. And also the criticism from the Lansing supervisor was very detailed and very concerned for his community, especially because there was a very real concern about significant reliability needs of the current gas customers in Lansing and the demands of prospective customers who've already requested gas and expected new demand growth in the area. So while there is significant interest for those in the surrounding community to not have gas, there is a competing interest. And so for Lansing, Lansing supervisor was feeling very frustrated that one community was seeming to be heard louder than his community, and at least from the perspective of that Lansing supervisor was very concerned about that and wanting more attention to it. This is not a case of us changing our detailed analysis in the rate case. In fact, in pages 63 through 66 in the rate case, we did a careful analysis of gas expansion and the benefits of gas expansion. I think is very, very important for us to be very mindful of the benefits and the challenges that are there. What's very important is clear engagement with the community and working with the utilities. In here, NYSEG has been very engaged in working with both communities and coming up with alternatives. So even though the rate case had blessed the project and they could have gone forward, they took a step back and tried to come up with some alternatives. It is a continued struggle to work through this, and that's why for us we need to be very mindful of the fact that it does not mean that now it will always be a go-to, that non-pipe alternatives even are always going to be the winning go-to solution. In fact, we need to be very careful that we're conveying that non-pipe alternatives may be an alternative. It is something to look at. What that is, we need to be very careful, and it must be economical, feasible, least costly, and we need to be very careful to go through that. This order, while I will be voting for it, I will not be voting with the majority in it because I do not think this order is detailed in what that is. This order talks about looking at the looking and considering the benefit cost analysis shall be conducted from both a company and customer perspective, considering the state and Tompkins County's emission reduction goals. It says nothing about the need for reliability. It says nothing about the need for whether or not there's a need for gas, whether there's an interest from the community in having gas. Those are things that I think we need to take more deliberative approach to. So I would hope that the support in all of those different things, and go back to the aspects that we raised in the rate case, the deliberative process that we did in that, are also taken into account. This order does mention the rate case, and so the rate case is not, and the rationale behind the rate case is not is no longer is still part of this and still part of the record. So it is something that I think is reflected in that. So that's why I will be voting for it, but only in concurrence. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Berman. Commissioner Lisi?
Well, at the end of the day, I guess this program is an innovative way to provide service in the general area, meeting an alternative way to deliver this service outside of establishing the pipelines. But it also appeals to me, even though it's not perfect, as a pilot program, so that maybe in other times and other applications we'll have something to learn from. And from that simple standpoint, I'll be supporting it.
Thank you very much. I'll proceed to call for a vote on this item, item 101. My vote is in favor of the recommendation to authorize the pilot compressor project as described. Commissioner Sayer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Berman?
I concur.
Commissioner Lisi?
Aye.
The item is approved and the recommendation is adopted. We move to the second item for discussion. Item 201, case 17M0178, which is the petition of Orange and Rockland Utilities for the authorization of a program advancement proposal presented by Nicola Jones, Utility Supervisor, and Rob Cully, Utility Engineer Specialist 2. Nicola, here. Please begin.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman Rhodes and Commissioners. Item 201 addresses the petition of Orange and Rockland for authorization of a program advancement proposal filed with the Commission on February 13, 2017. Orange and Rockland petition requested authorization for changes the company proposed to its energy efficiency program, low-income credits, advanced metering infrastructure project, also referred to as AMI. The petition also requests approval of a non-wires alternative framework. Item 201 recommends 5 actions. First, that the Commission's consideration of Orange and Rockland's proposed changes to its energy efficiency program and low-income credit be deferred until additional input and further review is done. Second, to approve a full-scale rollout of Orange and Rockland's enhanced AMI system throughout its New York service territory. Third, to approve the company's proposed AMI customer engagement plan. Fourth, to deny Orange and Rockland's request to implement an AMI rate pilot. And finally, to approve a non-wires alternative framework for Orange and Rockland. I will now turn my attention to Orange and Rockland's AMI project. In Orange and Rockland's 2015 rate order that was issued October 16, 2015, under case 14E0493, the Commission approved the installation of AMI devices for electric and gas customers in Rockland County, and ordered Orange and Rockland to collaborate with stakeholders to develop a revised AMI business plan. Furthermore, the Commission articulated it retained the right to make a further determination on Orange and Rockland's AMI implementation and could decide to modify or halt the project. Orange and Rockland did engage stakeholders in the development of the company's present AMI business plan, and it worked with its sister company, Con Edison, to further refine its business plan and to negotiate with and select AMI vendors. Orange and Rockland's AMI business plan includes the installation of AMI for its approximately 229,000 electric and 136,000 gas customers over the next 4 years. Over the 20-year life expectancy of the AMI system, Orange and Rockland determined a net benefit of approximately $15.6 million in net present value. After SAPA was issued for this petition, one comment was filed by a member of the public that requested the petition be denied due to unspecified health and safety concerns. I do want you to know that for customers who would like to opt out of AMI meter installation for any reason, including health or safety concerns, customers can contact the utility to make such arrangement. In addition, Orange and Rockland's tariffs that address this matter have already been approved by the Commission. Staff did analyze Orange and Rockland's AMI project proposal. It was found that Orange and Rockland has partnered with Con Edison to use a similar AMI system and development schedule. Con Edison's AMI business plan that incorporated lessons learned from utilities across the country and Canada was approved by the Commission effective March 17, 2016, under case 15E0050. This AMI system is an enhancement to Orange and Rockland's original proposal approved by the Commission in Orange and Rockland's 2015 rate order. This approach allows for additional cost savings, incorporation of best practices learned by Con Edison, and synergies between both utilities. Preventing AMI system obsolescence and managing costs are key areas that require ongoing monitoring. Therefore, the draft order recommends the tracking of upgrades to Orange and Rockland's AMI system through AMI metrics, a cap on AMI capital expenditures budget to a total project cost of $98.5 million, incorporation of value engineering to minimize future costs, and for the utility to provide an annual filing of AMI expenditures incurred and cost reduction benefits realized. Staff reviewed the benefit cost analysis provided by Orange and Rockland, including assumptions, costs, and benefit projections. Staff agrees with Orange and Rockland that the benefits derived from this project exceed cost. In fact, staff found that the benefits identified by Orange and Rockland are conservative. Regarding Orange and Rockland's customer engagement plan, the draft order recommends its approval. The plan was developed with input from stakeholders, including staff, customers, and third parties, and addressed customer data access and data privacy issues. However, the draft order recommends the denial of Orange and Rockland's proposed AMI rate pilot. Rather, Orange and Rockland can use information from Conedison's AMI rate pilot, and such information is to be used to create innovative rate design. The draft order recommends that Orange and Rockland may defer the revenue requirement associated with the implementation of the incremental project scope until base rates are reset. In addition, for the customer engagement plan, as long as recovery of the incremental cost does not cause the company to over-earn during the period costs are incurred, the company is allowed to defer these costs until base rates are reset. All costs associated with this project are subject to further review in Orange and Rockland's next rate case proceeding. Overall, AMI will contribute to the modernization of the company's electric and gas distribution system, creating operational savings and efficiencies as well as increased visibility and control of its system. AMI can facilitate customer access to products and services provided by third parties. AMI can empower customers to become aware of their energy usage, which can allow them to better manage their energy costs. I'm glad to report to date, Orange and Rockland has used AMI funds approved in its 2015 rate order to successfully install its AMI backbone information technology systems, began billing customers based on AMI data, completed design and installation of the communication network in Rockland, installed over 34,000 AMI meters devices in Rockland, began its outreach to its customers and government entities, and is working towards completing the design and installation of its AMI communication network system for Orange and Sullivan counties. I will now turn this item over to Mr. Robert Cully, who will discuss Orange and Rockland's non-wires alternative framework.
Thank you, Nicola. Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes and Commissioners. I'll be providing the overview of staff's recommendations related to the non-wire alternative, or NWA, framework as proposed by ONR. Similar to the non-pipes alternatives discussed previously this afternoon, non-wire alternative projects replace or defer the need for electric transmission and distribution system infrastructure through the use of customer-side distributed energy resources, or DERs, or load reductions, and are an important part of the portfolio of regulatory reforms designed to engage utilities in decreasing costs and providing value to customers. Orange and Rockland seeks and pursues cost-effective non-wire alternative projects that would allow for the delay of traditional capital infrastructure investment, which would otherwise be needed to accommodate the growth in peak electric demand in various areas of the company's service territory. The company's filing proposed a shareholder incentive that would provide for 30% of the present value of net benefits resulting from non-wire alternative projects pursued, and is essentially identical to the mechanism approved by the Commission in January for non-wire alternative incentives at Consolidated Edison in case 15E0229. The draft order adopts Orange and Rockland's proposed incentive mechanism. The mechanism includes a multi-step process for determining a final incentive that would reward the company for maximizing customer benefits and minimizing the cost to achieve such benefits. Under that process, an initial shareholder incentive would be determined as a 30% share of the net benefits, calculated based on a detailed benefit cost analysis. To provide a strong price signal for the company to manage and reduce costs of the non-wire alternative project throughout its implementation, the company would share 50-50 in the difference between the total cost assumed in the initial net benefits calculation and the actual total cost once the non-wire alternative project is completed. Therefore, the final shareholder incentive would equal the sum of the initial incentive and 50% of the cost overruns or underruns of the non-wire alternative project. The final incentive will be subject to both a floor and a cap, such that the final incentive will be neither less than $0 nor greater than 50% of the initial net benefits. The cap, in particular, reduces gaming opportunities for the company to overstate or understate initial non-wire alternative project costs or traditional capital project costs. Overall, the mechanism represents a financially meaningful incentive opportunity that should encourage Orange and Rockland to pursue innovative portfolio-level approaches to implementing non-wire alternative projects while producing significant net benefits for customers. Finally, the draft order requires several checkpoints throughout the process, during which the filing of operating and accounting procedures, as well as an implementation plan and benefit cost analyses for each non-wire alternative portfolio will be required.
Thank you. So I am going to support this item. I agree with and find that the deferral of the energy efficiency low-income credits makes sense. I like the consistency implied with the non-wires alternative framework following a model established for other utilities, including Con Ed. And most substantively, I'm going to approve the AMI proposal with the customer engagement plan and without the rate pilot. These advanced meters are a smart investment just for the cost savings alone that they produce for customers and thus for customers. On top of that, they have other benefits. They enable better customer engagement and provide the foundational information for customers and suppliers to save money and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by better managing and decreasing energy use in the future. Commissioner Sayre.
The chair already made all of my points.
Sorry.
I'm satisfied that the AMI program passed the required benefit cost analysis, even looked at conservatively as staff did. And now that it makes financial sense, it has all these extra benefits through our REV proceeding to allow customers to both better manage their energy and, if they so choose, participate in developing energy markets. So I do support the item as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Berman.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, I thought you had very good presentation, so thank you both. On the discussion page on page 16, under Low Income and Energy Efficiency Program, it says O&R's request for the expansion and cost recovery of low-income credits and its energy efficiency program does require further review from staff and input from stakeholders. Therefore, this component of the petition will not be considered at this time. That's all it says about the petition and I was left confused by why there wasn't more analysis and why we weren't addressing what was the review, when will it be taken care of, where will it be looked at, since we have been so focused on both low income and energy efficiency, and it was a part of the petition. So I was just trying to figure out where it fits.
I think with regard to the low-income credits, we've just implemented, we're still in the process of implementing the most recent commission order in the low-income proceeding, and it's not an appropriate time to consider modifications to those credits at this point.
Okay.
And for the energy efficiency, while it's not in a similar light, but there are other efforts going on regarding energy efficiency, and it was one, we didn't get much feedback from stakeholders regarding these two components once the petition was SAPID, but also we feel like those two areas are areas that would be better addressed in a lot of the efforts around the energy efficiency. And also, as as was stated, along with the low income program efforts.
Okay.
But they will be addressed in the future.
Okay. I was concerned. We only got one commenter, and that that seemed odd to me. Did that seem odd to anyone else? Not from. I mean, since it was low income, energy efficiency, AMI. We didn't hear from UIU. We didn't hear from Pope. We didn't hear from our consumer advocate. We didn't hear from any of the energy efficiency folks.
I can speak for the AMI component. I know that ONR has been in constant contact with a lot of the parties, the stakeholders, customers, staff, with every major step they made as far as their plans with AMI. They kept everyone informed, so that could be a reason why there wasn't a lot of comments related to AMI. For the other areas, I'm not sure.
Okay, that's okay. On page 17, it says that ONR is to file annual reports to provide information regarding AMI system upgrades and improvements. In addition, value engineering should be used to determine how future additional benefits can be achieved from AMI with minimal incremental costs. Once we have the annual reports, staff will look at them, make adjustments, work through all that. The value engineering, who does that?
That would be something that we're asking the utility to do as part of their process with evaluating future actions related to AMI.
Okay. Okay. With the this, I think this is for you, Mr. Cully. With the non-wire alternative and the projects that are out there, are we evaluating the projects that are selected, working with the different utilities, in this particular case, ONR, to review, get feedback from some of the folks that have been selected, not only, or the ones that haven't been, that have participated? I know that they got a lot of folks that submitted bids into the non-wires alternatives. For those that didn't make it, maybe the lessons learned from that, and opportunities so that we can draw upon that for other non-wire alternative opportunities holistically. What works, what doesn't work. What are we doing with those types of opportunities?
So the short answer is that the review process of the how the RFP or other procurement process worked is a regular part of our engagement with not only the utility but stakeholders in each of these cases. Generally speaking, these non-wire alternatives tend to, at least the ones that we've gotten so far, have their own RFPs, and so each utility is working through kind of their unique procurement processes. Some of the other less experienced utilities than, say, Con Edison, who's had a number of different procurement processes related to its Brooklyn Queens demand management program, have been going more of a traditional RFP and then work out which are the best projects, whether on a single project or portfolio basis, to move forward with in their for their particular non-wire alternative programs. I would expect from ONR that to be the case as well for the first few non-wire alternatives, but we've been generally seeing a trend towards more market-based type procurements apart from RFPs as we do more and more in the non-wire alternative realm.
Okay. I am very much impressed with ONR's outreach and education components, the four components, the energy future aware, informed, and engaged. I think that framework is a very good one. I do think that customer engagement and outreach is very important. I do think that using these technologies to develop these innovative products and services are very important, and this can really be very helpful. I do think we need to be very careful and keep an eye on all of this and continue to look at what this means, especially as we go into the future and the rate case and other aspects of this. And as we look at the non-wires alternatives going forward, I think that's very important. I do want to mention that the aspects that we didn't approve with the low income and the energy efficiency, I want to make sure that doesn't fall off, and that we are making sure that it gets addressed in other aspects. I think the energy efficiency piece in particular is particularly important, as well as low income, which falls among all aspects that we're doing, not just by itself as a standalone. So I want to make sure that, because I do think that's what sort of caused me concern when I saw, just very short discussion in the order, caused me some pause. Okay, thank you.
I apologize. My mic wasn't working. It wasn't on. It was working. Sorry. I voted in favor. Colleen, please begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes and Commissioners. Item 202 is a draft order authorizing the conclusion of the Energy Efficiency Portfolio Standard. The Energy Efficiency Portfolio Standard, or EAPS, was initially authorized in a June 24, 2008 Commission order and supported the implementation and operation of energy efficiency programs by 11 investor-owned electric and or gas utilities and the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA. EAPS was ordered and implemented in two distinct phases, or periods. EAPS 1 programs ran from the initial EAPS authorization through December 31, 2011, and EAPS 2 ran from January 1, 2012 through December 31, 2015. The draft order that is before you addresses three topics supporting the conclusion of EAPS. EAPS 1 program overspending, EAPS shareholder incentive awards, and deadlines and reporting requirements for the final financial closeout of EAPS. These topics were the subject of a June 16, 2017 staff proposal that was issued for public comment. My presentation will briefly summarize each topic. First, the topic of EAPS 1 program overspending. During EAPS 1, the Commission approved each EAPS program along with the specific annual budget for each and expected that program administrators would modulate program delivery to work within approved annual budgets. As EAPS progressed, the Commission gradually granted greater flexibility to allow banking and borrowing across program years and transfer of funds between and among programs to align with customer demand and to prevent temporary interruption of program delivery. During EAPS 1, 5 utilities overspent 11 EAPS 1 programs, but with the increased flexibility authorized by the Commission, there were no EAPS 2 overexpenditures, and none of the utilities overspent their EAPS portfolio. The Commission previously addressed 2 of these EAPS 1 program expenditures in a March 4, 2015 order that authorized Niagara Mohawk to retain unspent EAPS 1 funds from other programs to cover the overspending in 2 of their programs. The draft order before you proposes similar treatment with regard to the remaining 9 programs, providing authorization for $640,788 in unspent electric funds to address overexpenditures of 3 electric program budgets and $1,301,610 in unspent EAPS gas funds to address overexpenditures in 7 EAPS 1 gas programs. The draft order recognizes that these expenditures benefited customers by providing additional energy efficiency services to an increased number of customers, but excludes these energy savings from counting toward the calculation of the utility shareholder incentives so as not to reward any utility for spending above their authorized program budgets. The second topic addressed in the draft order is the calculation and awarding of EAPS shareholder incentives. As described in the draft order, the Commission, in an August 2008 order and several subsequent orders, instituted a financial incentives model designed to motivate utilities to pursue energy efficiency programs. The model included the awarding of utility shareholder incentives based on utility performance against Commission-established energy savings targets. Both EAPS 1 and EAPS 2 included a graduated structure that allowed utilities to earn positive incentives if they achieved between 80 and 100% of their portfolio target. Under EAPS 1, there was a symmetrical design with a negative incentive applied for performance between 50 and 70% of the target. Gas utilities were allowed to opt out of the EAPS 1 incentive structure. Under EAPS 2, the Commission retained the graduated incentive structure but modified it to be a positive-only structure for performance between 80 and 100%. The EAPS 2 incentive structure applied to all electric and gas utilities running EAPS programs. The EAPS 2 structure also included 2 tiers, with the first tier, Step 1, rewarding utilities for meeting their own target, and the second tier, Step 2, rewarding utilities for achievement against the statewide goal to which utility and NYSERDA achievements contributed. There are a number of specific components included in the calculation of the incentives, and related issues are discussed in the draft order, such as a credit for utility referrals to the NYSERDA Empower programs, a Con Edison-specific megawatt reduction component, gas unit conversions, definition of the EAPS 1 performance period, and multiple updates and corrections to utility reported energy savings values. Ultimately, the incentive structure seems to have been an effective motivator, as the utilities in NYSERDA achieved 97% of the statewide electric target and 93% of the statewide gas target. Based on this performance result, the draft order recommends awarding $56.5 million in total EAPS electric shareholder incentives and $12.4 million in total gas shareholder incentives, with specific awards for each utility specified in the order. The draft order directs the unspent, unencumbered utility EAPS funds, as reported in the EAPS reporting application through October 17, 2017, be used to pay the shareholder incentives, and to the extent that a particular utility does not have adequate funds, NYSERDA is directed to provide the remaining balance using available unspent, unencumbered funds reported in its March 31, 2017 uncommitted funds report. The third topic addressed in the draft order is the final financial reconciliation and conclusion of EAPS. The draft order establishes a set date of December 31, 2017 for the conclusion of all utility EAPS spending and February 29, 2020 for the conclusion of all NYSERDA EAPS spending. By June 30, 2018, each utility is directed to file an up-to-date accounting of EAPS financial information, inclusive of accrued interest, which will establish a clear point-in-time baseline for future Commission action with regard to remaining unspent EAPS funds and future accrued interest. Similarly, NYSERDA is directed to provide an equivalent report within 180 days of the conclusion of its EAPS programs. I want to thank and acknowledge the many hours of effort the staff, particularly Katie Mammon and Daniel Foley, put into reconciling the information and data to support the development of this draft order. Ted Kelly and I are available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Colleen. This item addresses the conclusion of the successful EAPS program, recognizing their achievement of 97% and 93% of the statewide electric and gas savings goals respectively, and as a result, awarding the appropriate utility shareholder incentives, and also for addressing the individual program under and over expenditures and establishing the dates and final financial reconciliation of reporting requirements. I am going to vote in favor of this item. Commissioner Sayre.
For me, the most important piece of this order is the last ordering paragraph. After some compliance activities and filings, the EAPS case is closed. I'm very happy to see the loose ends tied up, and I commend the chair and the staff, and in particular Colleen and Ted, for getting this done. It took a lot of work. EAPS was a good program, and it was a successful program, and we've learned from it, and I believe that our replacement programs are better. It makes sense to me, and it's a matter of some relief to me, therefore, to put EAPS 1 and EAPS 2 into the rearview mirror.
So I have a different perspective. I was not a member of the commission when the EAPS process was rolled out, but I do know that the process was undertaken under an imperative to get the many energy efficiency programs up and running in an extremely tight and probably unreasonable time frame. I do believe that there have been many lessons learned from the EAPS initiative, including the need to be more prudent and measured in making our demands, the need to be more realistic and thoughtful ahead of time about how quickly goals can be accomplished, and the need to truly understand what the financial implications may be to run the programs and to prepare in case programs are more in demand than anticipated. That way we can truly issue orders that properly authorize programs that can be implemented effectively and stay within the bounds of the commission orders. Those lessons are especially important when the programs will affect varied types of customers in ways that we likely may not be able to anticipate, but should try to plan for. So while there are some successes in the EAPS program, and I do acknowledge that that is from the hard work of many, the utilities and the commission staff, Colleen and her folks have spent enormous time, and I do think that we need to recognize there were many flaws and there were many trip-ups along the way. When the commission issues an order establishing a maximum budget for a program, the utility or other entities responsible for administering that program, including NYSERDA, needs to respect the commission order. I do have a concern in when we overspend doing retroactive authorizations. Does not go unnoticed that I was not here when that major reauthorization, retroactive authorization of overspending was done February 26, 2015, when I was not here and I was excused for health reasons. Thereafter, I raised additional concerns, and I have made it very clear publicly that I would not, I was not comfortable in doing retroactive overspending of programs. I think that we need to look very carefully when we do that, even if there are reasons for doing so. I think we need to have true conversations about that. Again, commission orders are very important, and we need to take those carefully, and we need to, in the end, be very careful in the outset. I do think going forward, we want to ensure that we as a commission, again, properly set goals, targets, timing, and funding in our orders that account for the real-life design and implementation of programs. We need to do a better job at the front end when we establish programs rather than, as in this case with EAPS, the Commission, in furtherance of its energy efficiency policy objectives, inappropriately rushed through and rolled out a flawed EAPS program. And while we did make course corrections, we didn't necessarily do it without significant delay, and we didn't do enough fast enough. We owe it to the ratepayers to get it right at the outset, and I'd like to make sure that we take careful note of the lessons from EAPS and do a better job continually, and not just say it's behind us, but make sure that we carefully take note of the lessons learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Alisi. Thank you. With that, I call for a vote on item 201. My vote is in favor of the recommendation to award the Utility Energy Efficiency Portfolio Standard shareholder incentives, address program over expenditures, and establish dates and final financial reconciliation reporting requirements supporting the conclusion of EAPS as described. Commissioner Sayre, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Berman?
No.
Commissioner Alisi?
Aye.
The item is approved and the recommendation is adopted.
May I just interrupt? I believe it's item 202. I think you may have said 201 at the beginning.
Thank you.
Just want to clarify that for the
It
record.
is indeed item 202. Thank you. We now move to the fourth item for discussion, item 301, get it right, case 17E0594, which is staff's report on the March 2017 windstorm and order to show cause presented by Christian Bonvin, Chief of Electric Distribution Systems, and Jane Cicerani, Managing Attorney. Christian, please begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes and Commissioners. Today I'll be discussing staff's investigation into the performance of New York State Electric Gas Corporation and Rochester Gas and Electric Corporation with regard to the windstorm that swept across western New York on March 8, 2017. The severe nature of the storm resulted in widespread damage to electric distribution systems. Fallen trees, broken poles, down wires, and road access made it difficult for emergency responders and residents. Peak outages were approximately 48,000 for NYSEG, 123,000 for RG&E, and 113,000 for National Grid. Restoration took until March 13th for NYSEG and March 15th for RG&E. In comparison, National Grid restored service to customers by midday on March 12th. Because of National Grid's ability to restore service in a timelier manner, the focus of the investigation was on NYSEG and RG&E. As you know, all investor-owned utilities are required under Public Service Law and 16 NYCRR Part 105 to file emergency response plan annually for review and commission approval. NYSEG and RG&E operate as a single entity when responding to storm events, and as such, they have a common emergency response plan. Staff's investigation considered a combination of elements, including a review of compliance with the company's emergency response plan, discussion and interviews with utility representatives and public officials, evaluation of complaint data filed with the Department's Office of Consumer Services, comments received as part of public statement hearings, meetings with company management and staff, analysis of the company's response to information requests, and other salient information. The investigation reviewed whether the utilities were properly prepared for and how they responded to the effects of the windstorm. Staff also examined the communications used to inform customers, emergency management personnel, government officials, and the media of the company's response and restoration efforts. While staff found certain areas where NYSEG and RG&E performed appropriately, our analysis also found several areas where the companies did not perform well, instances where they did not follow the processes identified in their emergency response plan, and opportunities for improvement. On the operational side, the companies were slow in identifying and managing the level of outside resources needed to execute a timelier restoration. While the companies were able to obtain a peak of 2,000 line workers to assist with the restoration effort, staff found the companies lacked a clear process to determine the appropriate crewing levels for the initial mutual aid requests, which impacted response in the early stages, and the companies failed to consider crews from nearby municipalities until the third day of the storm response. This was a missed opportunity for the companies to acquire additional resources earlier in the restoration period. Staff also concluded that RG&E did not perform adequate damage assessment in the early stages of the storm and lost valuable time during the first days of restoration by verifying broken poles rather than performing a holistic review of their system. The failure to initiate proper damage assessment resulted in the company having insufficient visibility into field conditions to best determine how to deploy crews. RG&E also did a poor job in identifying critical facilities impacted and communicating with Monroe County as to the priority of which critical facilities needed to be restored first. Effective coordination did not occur until Friday, leading to frustration, inefficiencies, and delayed restoration of key facilities. Staff also concluded that RG&E's restoration effort failed to give appropriate consideration to affected communities served by smaller circuits, such as the City of Rochester. The companies also need to make improvements to their wire-down procedures to ensure they are properly prepared to handle the high volume of wires down during major events. With respect to communication, staff concluded that the companies fell short of the department's and the public's expectation to provide timely, accurate, and detailed information during a power outage. In fact, the communication tools used by the companies, which include press releases, its website, social media, and the customer service call center, lack consistent and accurate updates on the restoration efforts and estimated times of restoration, or ETRs. ETRs are vital to customers who must rely on this information for planning purposes during outage events, and today's customers expect the most up-to-date information to be provided to them through various outlets. The companies were slow to develop ETRs and failed to issue them within the time periods defined in their emergency response plan. Certain locations had more than 3/4 of the customers restored before an ETR was issued for those areas. Staff further concluded that the process used by the companies to communicate with their life support equipment customers, or LSE customers, was deficient. Utilities must maintain daily contact with LSE customers during an outage event, which is typically done through phone conversations. If the company is unable to make contact by phone, an in-person visit is required. Utilities may make the visit using company personnel or refer LSE customers each day to an emergency service agency. If an agency is used, the utility needs to obtain the results of those referrals. However, the company has failed to verify the outcomes of the visits during this storm. Additionally, RG&E was reluctant initially to provide the list of LSE customers to an emergency service agency. Overall, staff's report reflects nearly 30 recommendations to remediate the shortcomings identified in this event. Implementation of these recommendations should result in better future performance. Staff also determined that one or both of the companies did not follow 7 areas of its emergency plan that include ETR development, LSE referrals, damage assessment, wire down response, prioritization of restoration, call center staffing, and updating call center messages. I will now turn it over to Jane to discuss the next steps.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes and the Commissioners. The next step in the process that we recommend, based on staff's findings, our investigation, is to issue an order to show cause. And that draft order that you have before you consists of two parts. One part addresses the possibility of a Public Service Law Section 25A administrative penalty regarding the apparent failures of the companies, NYSEG and RG&E, to follow their commission-approved emergency response plans. And it requires the companies to show cause why such penalty action should not be commenced. The steps after that would depend upon the company's responses. The other part of the draft order is for the companies to address the staff recommendations set forth in the report, either accepting the recommendations and explaining how they plan to implement them, or explaining why they believe the recommendations shouldn't be implemented, and provide alternatives to address the problems identified. The companies are encouraged in the draft report, in the draft order, to consult with staff in developing their responses to the recommendations. We expect that these recommendations would also be included in the December Emergency Response Plan filings required by Public Service Law Section 6621, which plans would then be SAP'd and presented to the Commission for approval in early 2018. The companies have 30 days from the date of the order to respond to both parts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Christian. I am going to vote in favor of the staff's recommendations. It's simply critically important that utilities adhere to our rules and regulations, specifically including, of course, Public Service Commission approved emergency response plans, and especially, as in this case, when the safety of New Yorkers is at stake. Given the findings, I think it's right that the Commission now consider the financial penalties on the companies for their apparent failure to follow Commission-approved emergency response plans. Commissioner Sayre.
I support this item, and I hope with this item we can send a couple of key messages to all utilities. First is to communicate with all customers, especially those on life support equipment. But all customers who are out of service need information. After a big storm, if it's going to take a number of days or even a couple of weeks to bring an area back up, that may or may not be the best that the utility can possibly do under the circumstances. But in any case, people need to have an estimated time of restoration as soon as possible so that they know what to do. My second message is to prepare. Now, I'm only speaking as one commissioner on this point, but I'd like to urge the utilities, when there's doubt, to pre-stage more resources and call in advance for more mutual assistance from other utilities before the storm hits. If the storm blows elsewhere, that's okay with me. That's a form of insurance. And in my view, some insurance is cheaper than the alternative, which is significantly delayed restoration if the storm turns out to hit harder than expected. We've had a lot of problems with a lot of storms in New York, and I don't think it's going to be getting any better in the future. So I urge the utilities to take these points to heart.
Thank you. Commissioner Berman.
Hurricane Sandy reinforced the importance of reliability and resiliency in New York. After Superstorm Sandy, the state amended Commission statutes to address the electric emergency plans and to increase our oversight and enforcement role with respect to the plans. In fact, the amended rules specified certain subject areas to be included in the electric emergency plans. Now, the electric emergency plans always were included, but it was the first time that the Commission was now adopting them, and also were focused on certain newer subject areas, and were required utilities now to file them. They would then be SAP'd, and the Commission would adopt them and approve them on or before December 15th of each year. They would be filed, and then the Commission reviews and approves the plan. So that actually now is coming up. I look at this, I'm not prejudging. This is a staff report. It's an order to show cause that we are issuing, and then the company will be responding to. But it does lead to the next phase, which, as Jane indicated, may lead to penalty action or not, but it really leads to me to the critical issue of how to incorporate into our emergency plans, into the utility emergency plans, what lessons can be learned. This is the first storm that rises to the level of a storm after Superstorm Sandy that required this type of review. And so for us, it's not just NYSEG and National Grid who are subjected to this review, but it's for all of the utilities, which they do annually, but now for all of the utilities to take a look at this report and also to work and see, what may be needing to be updated in their plans. Not only is it just from this lessons learning that there may be, but also from other impacted areas from Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Irma as well, that we may be able to take some lessons learning and see. I don't want us to prejudge. However, I do think that some key issues in terms of communication obviously seems to be the single most important aspect of something that needs to be improved. So we should look at that. But to the extent that the plans themselves are supposed to be live working documents that help tell a story, so that it's before, during, and after, that we need to make sure we understand and have robust emergency plans that work, and then after the fact look at to implement and make corrective changes as needed. Each event will be different, and so we need to take that into account. I look forward to those plans being issued and then reviewed, SAPID, and then coming before us for approval and as amended as needed.
Thank you. Commissioner Alisi.
I guess I will be succinct but very blunt about this. I think that the department report outlines in numerous ways the company's failure, and I'm going to support the effort here. I think that I will also look forward to the company's response on this. I'll be supporting that.
Thank you. So with that, we proceed to call for a vote on item 301. My vote is in favor of the recommendation to direct NYSEG and RG&E to address the recommendations in staff's report and show cause why the Commission should not commence an administrative penalty action as described. Commissioner Sayre, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Berman?
Yes.
Commissioner Alisi?
Aye.
The item is approved and the recommendation is adopted. We now move to the fifth item for discussion, item 302, case 15E0302, as it relates to the Phase 2 implementation plan of the Clean Energy Standard, presented by Tina Palmero, Deputy Director of Clean Energy, Tom Rienzo, Chief Clean Energy Programs, and Tony Balsito, Senior Counsel, are available for questions. Okay, Tina, please begin.
Thank you, Chair Rhodes. And good afternoon, Commissioners. Item 302 before you recommends that the Commission approve the Clean Energy Standard Phase 2 implementation plan proposed by staff and NYSERDA filed in May. The plan has 5 primary components. First, it documents staff's review of the 2018 through 2021 annual targets for load-serving entities, or LSEs, and proposes some revisions to the targets consistent with clarifications that have been made by the Commission after the CES August Framework Order was issued. Second, the plan establishes protocols for an annual divergence test, which, if the test results fall outside of prescribed ranges, it may trigger an interim review of the annual targets by the Commission. Third, the proposal establishes a new procedure for the sale of Tier 1 RECs by NYSERDA beginning with the 2018 compliance period. Fourth, the proposal establishes the method to calculate the Alternative Compliance Payment, or ACP, for 2018. And finally, the plan proposes and solicits comments on some additional design options regarding NYSERDA's annual Tier 1 procurements. The Phase 2 implementation plan proposal was noticed under SAPA, and comments were filed individually or jointly, representing the views of about 20 parties in this proceeding. While staff is not recommending any substantive changes to the Phase 2 plan based on those comments, it is recommending that the Commission require some follow-up to address comments on a few issues. First, with respect to the LSE mandated targets, while no party specifically questioned the method for calculating the targets, some parties requested that the targets be projected out through 2030 to provide sufficient lead time for development of renewable projects and for other market participants to be able to plan well in advance. Staff does not see the need to project targets out to 2030 at this time, because undoubtedly targets set that far in advance will need to be adjusted in the future. But staff does recognize that sufficient lead time is required for all market participants to plan well in advance, and therefore recommends that the Commission requires staff and NYSERDA to provide a rolling trajectory of no less than 3 years for the LSE mandated percentage targets. NYSERDA's Tier 1 procurement targets should also be required on a 3-year rolling basis. There were also comments that recommended creating additional regulatory policies around some of the input assumptions used to calculate the LSE mandated targets to ensure that those assumptions are either tracked or enforced. While some of those recommendations are outside of the scope of the Phase 2 proposal, tracking the success or the accuracy of the assumptions used to calculate the targets are important. And these will be reviewed at a minimum in the triennial review process as already set forth by the Commission. However, in reporting progress on the growth of renewable energy consumed in the state, staff is recommending that NYSERDA post on its website the method for calculating the fuel mix, which is tracked through the New York Generation Attribute Tracking System, or NIGATS. This will provide the transparency in accounting for the historic renewable energy baseline. That's one of the input assumptions for creating the targets. It will also provide transparency with respect to the achievements of the mandated targets and also activity in the voluntary market for measuring progress towards the overall renewable energy standard 50 by 30 goal. With respect to the Alternative Compliance Payment, or the ACP, most comments on this topic oppose using any ACP funds as a backstop to pay nuclear generators as part of the Zero Emission Credit Program, or the ZEC program. There was also concern that any collected ACP funds held at NYSERDA should not just sit in an account to offset an expense which may not occur or may not occur at the magnitude of the accumulated funds. To address these comments, staff is first proposing that ACPs that are collected should be used to offset the cost of achieving the renewable energy goals, which are distinct and separate from the ZEC program goals. Also, staff recommends that if there's a cumulative surplus of ACP payments that is more than 25% of NYSERDA's contractual payment obligations to renewable generators of the current year, NYSERDA will need to propose a use for the excess portion of those funds that is in the ratepayer interest, which will, help offset the cost of the Renewable Energy Standard Program. Finally, with respect to NYSERDA's solicitation design, the Phase 2 proposal asks for comments on the aggregation of discrete but like facilities into a single bid in response to NYSERDA's Tier 1 procurements. The proposal also asks for comments on co-located facilities of different technologies into a single bid. Comments supported both of these arrangements. Therefore, staff is recommending that procurement design details be developed by staff and NYSERDA for commission consideration to accommodate those types of arrangements prior to the release of a solicitation in 2019. There were no additional issues raised in comments that staff believed warranted changes to the Phase 2 proposal. Therefore, staff recommends it be approved and that a final plan be filed no later than 30 days of the issuance of an order. Approval of the item today will enable NYSERDA to meet its December 1 deadline for publishing certain renewable energy standard information required for the 2018 compliance year, including the LSE mandated compliance targets, the projected ACP price, and the scheduled dates for the 2018 Tier 1 solicitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. I'm going to support this item. It takes the next steps and sets out the procedures and methods and fund management rules for NYSERDA to implement the next phase of the Clean Energy Standard, and including, importantly in my view, providing additional rolling future visibility for the annual Renewable Energy Standard targets for 18 through 21. Commissioner Sayre.
I concur with the chair.
Commissioner Berman.
I have a couple of questions.
Mr. Chairman, while we wait, could we clarify, Commissioner Sayre, you're saying you voted yes? Yes. Okay.
He hasn't voted yet.
I'm sorry. You used the word concur, which is what's throwing me off.
Trying to come to the dark side. He got worried. It says on page 20, for example, NYSERDA may propose to use these surplus funds to reduce the REC price for subsequent quarterly REC sale. Do we know when they may propose that? Are we giving them a timeline to propose that?
That was just an example of what could be done with any surplus funds that may become available with the ACPs. First of all, we don't expect there to be a lot of ACP payments, at least in the near term, because we're trying to match the amount of RECs that will be available to the LSE obligation. But if there is a fund sitting there, then NYSERDA will need to propose what it would do with the excess. So they would have to propose that, and that would be for comment and then determination. That was just an example.
I don't like the fuzziness of it in the order.
As an example, where it says, for example, NYSERDA may propose to use these surplus funds to reduce the REC price. You didn't like that example?
No, I like it's fine to have it as an example, but since we said it, I think that if it's something that they may propose, I'm wondering if we should be giving them some firmness in terms of when this may, they're thinking of proposing it. Obviously, there's something that's there that when that comes.
I think the reason we're not directing them or requesting a specific proposal or even a time frame for a proposal is, as Tina said, we're not sure if there will be a fund of money. We're not sure when that fund of money will become substantial enough to require a proposal, and we're not sure of the magnitude of what those funds would be. So I think, depending on the size of the funds, what an appropriate proposal would be would probably change.
So what's the analysis that's happening to determine all of those factors? What's the calculations that are going on? Who's involved in that?
So the ACP funds, if there are any, will be collected by NYSERDA and will be accounted for, so we will know what those collections are, what the ACP collections are. If, as we're proposing, if there is a surplus of funds over 25% of what NYSERDA needs to pay the generators, the renewable generators, then they will say, okay, we've got the surplus funds. We propose to use them for ratepayer interest. We propose to use them in this way.
Right.
And at that time when they propose it, that will either be in an implementation plan, a separate petition filing to go out to comment, and then the commission will decide. You know, the framework order said, you know, ACP funds should be used to help reduce the cost of the program. So how that's done, I think it's going to really depend on a lot of factors, what's going on at the time.
My concern is always that there are times where it seems like we hold on to money for a long time and that it doesn't seem like we then act, and then I want to make sure that that there is a trigger that happens for decision-making purposes.
The 25% would be the trigger for a proposal from NYSERDA, and the onus would be on staff to make sure to coordinate with NYSERDA to make sure that proposal gets in, and essentially.
Then it could sit. It doesn't. Then there's no trigger in terms of then the commission, right?
It would be staff's responsibility to make sure that there was an item after the proposal prepared in a timely manner, similar to most proposals that come in either from NYSERDA or other parties.
And then the commission should act timely.
That's up to you guys.
I'm nodding.
All right. That was a big hint. Okay, thanks for hearing that.
Commissioner Lisi.
I concur with Commissioner Sayre.
In a non-voting manner. Okay. With that, we proceed to calling for a vote on item 302. Sorry. With that, we proceed to calling for a vote with the mic on for item 302. So my vote is in favor of the recommendation to approve the Phase 2 implementation plan proposal for the clean energy standard as described. Commissioner Sayre, how do you vote? Commissioner Berman?
I'm going to be abstaining. I don't think that this order is detailed enough, and there are other items that are still weighing on the impact of this that affect this decision. Many other decisions that have to be. However, I do understand that this is in many ways trying to facilitate some finality in certain decisions, but the order itself is like the repowering issue and others still is leaving holes for decision making that I'd like to see a lot more finality, including the state energy plan and other things that we need to address more holistically. So I'm going to be abstaining from voting.
Thank you. Commissioner Lisi?
I vote yes.
The item is carried, and the item is approved, and the recommendation is adopted. We now move to the sixth item for discussion. Item 303, cases 16E0710 et al., as they relate to LED street lighting tariff amendments for New York State Electric and Gas Corporation and Rochester Gas and Electric Corporation, presented by Peggy Neville, Deputy Director, Office of Clean Energy. Peggy, please begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhodes and Commissioners. Today I will be presenting on Item 303, revised electric tariff filings for both the New York State Electric and Gas Corporation and Rochester Gas and Electric Corporation to offer company-owned, company-maintained LED street lighting tariffs. Many municipalities around the state have expressed interest in pursuing LED street lighting conversions for the economic and environmental benefits they offer over standard street lighting equipment. As you know, municipalities can negotiate the purchase of their streetlights with their utility in order to pursue LED conversions. However, for many municipalities, particularly smaller municipalities, purchasing their street lighting assets and taking on the operations and maintenance responsibilities is not a viable option. Staff is excited to bring this item before you today, as it represents the final installment of work the staff team has undertaken over the last 2 years with regard to company-owned, company-maintained LED street lighting tariffs. Staff recommends approving the tariff filings with modifications as detailed in the draft order before you. In doing so, NYSEG and RG&E will join Central Hudson, Orange and Rockland, and National Grid in providing LED options that better meet the needs of interested municipalities. As with the other items the Commission has previously approved, this item recognizes that, in addition to providing the LED tariffs, municipalities may also benefit from access to financing and technical assistance. With regard to access to financing, the item before you includes the option for NYSEG and RG&E to finance the undepreciated book value of the existing street lighting assets, allowing municipalities who are interested in this option to pay over time with the savings resulting from the LED conversion. We also note that the New York Green Bank has stated in their 2017-18 business plan that it expects to proactively engage with municipalities and utilities to determine any financial solutions that they may be also able to support. On the technical assistance side, NYSERDA currently provides technical assistance in this area that consists of the availability of an LED street lighting toolkit, which includes case studies, fact sheets, and step-by-step guides. They also assist municipalities with evaluating various options to LED conversions and are partnering with the Lighting Research Center to potentially offer additional trainings and informational resources. This concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Peggy. I'm planning to support this item. New York State's policy has repeatedly championed municipal government efficiency and the encouraging of municipalities to take greater control over their energy usage. Implementing LED street lighting options can do much to support these twin goals, as well as the state's achievement of its own clean energy goals. NYSEG and RG&E are encouraged to continue to look for additional ways to help improve their customers' energy efficiency opportunities. Commissioner Sayre?
I see this as a great news item. As the chair just said, LED streetlights help municipalities save energy and tax dollars at the same time. So I commend staff and Peggy in particular for getting this program rolled out. It was, again, a lot of work. I think it's a wonderful result.
Commissioner Berman.
Thank you. I think that was very comprehensive. I'm not going to be voting with the majority on this item. I will be concurring. My concern is that We have been doing these in silos, and my concern is also that it has been a little chunky or clunky, chunky and clunky really, in our state energy policy as it relates to LED street lighting, and we've become a little bit overzealous in the advocacy of pushing LED street lighting rather than being allowing the municipalities to have clear, informed decision-making opportunities on their energy efficiency portfolio as it relates to one of the options being street lighting and LED, and working with the utilities in a more grassroots perspective. And while I do think that the technical assistance that can be utilized from NYSERDA is very beneficial, I do think we need to be very careful that we don't become too overly aggressive in pushing it from a policy objective in the sense that they may not need all that we are pushing upon them, and that there are many different aspects of it that have significant challenges to it, and municipalities need to have real clear understanding of what their options are. And so I know that NYSERDA had done a few years ago a very comprehensive analysis on street lighting options, and I do think it's might be beneficial to look at updating that, but also working with not only the legislature on the different aspects that are out there, but also with the relevant associations that are out there to help make sure that it's one voice, and also working with the different utilities in some of the challenges and opportunities, and also taking a look at some of the different things and confusion that is out there. Not all municipalities will want to own their street lights. Not all municipalities are fully understanding all of that's out there, which is why it's very important that we're very clear, and some of the upgrades, while it may be appropriate and while there may be some funding that's available, the long-term implications need to be carefully weighed and looked at. So I am very supportive. I think it's very helpful, but I really want to make sure that we are very, very careful in our approach so that we are truly doing what's right for New York on this issue for the short and long term. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Alisi.
Yeah, thank you.
With that, I move to a vote on this item 303. My vote is in favor of the recommendation to approve the tariff amendments with modifications as described. Commissioner Sayre, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Berman?
I concur.
Commissioner Alisi?
Yes.
The item is approved and the recommendation is adopted. We will now move to the consent agenda. Do any of my fellow commissioners wish to recuse from voting on or comment on any items on the consent agenda? No. Commissioner Alisi? With that, I move to a call for a vote. My vote is in favor of the recommendations on the consent agenda. Commissioner Sayre, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Berman? Aye. Commissioner Alisi?
Aye.
The items are approved and the recommendations are adopted. I am going to inject one more observation, if I may, before I turn to you, Secretary Burgess. I would like all of us who care about these issues to recognize that yesterday, November 15th, was Utility Scam Awareness Day. Many electric, water, and natural gas customers throughout the country are being targeted by scams, by imposter utility scams each day. And these scammers typically use phone, in-person, and online tactics to do so. Yesterday, as I said, the PSC, along with our major electric and gas utilities, participated in a Utility Scam Awareness Day, a national event to help raise awareness and educate customers about scams. Preventing utility scams is not a one-day effort. The PSC and our utility partners will continue to help spread awareness of the suspicious behaviors and the evolving tactics that scammers use to target customers. It's important that customers call their utilities directly to check on the status of their accounts if they are ever unsure of authenticity of a call or identity of a service worker, or if they suspect any fraudulent service activity. Let's stay alert. Thank you. Secretary Burgess, is there anything further to come before us today?
There's nothing further to come before you today. And the next commission meeting is December 14th, and the location has been changed to Albany rather than in New York City.
Thank you. So we're going to adjourn the meeting, but I want to do one out-of-meeting bit of business as well. I think we're all aware, I hope all of us in this room are aware, that the department's and commission's focus on the value of distributed energy resources to set out clearly how to calculate the value stack, the instrument we use to compensate these new energy resources appropriate. And this is a major milestone and a major first step that creates more accurate and value-reflective pricing to spur development of the projects that are most valuable to the grid. This is where I start getting embarrassing. So on a staff level, this work has been led by Scott Wiener, our Deputy for Markets and Innovation. And on Tuesday, this week, Scott and his project leader team were presented with an innovation award by the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, NARUC. In particular, this innovation award cites and recognizes the work of Scott, along with our Director of Market and Regulatory Economics, Warren Myers, our Deputy Director for Market Structure, Marco Padula, and our Assistant Counsel, Ted Kelly. So on behalf of the Commission, I would like to personally congratulate Scott, Warren, Marco, and Ted, as well as the other staff members on the team for the long, and that is objectively true, and fruitful, also true, hours that they have spent on this and on so many other important REV endeavors. New York is fortunate, New Yorkers are fortunate to have such expert public servants. Thank you.